Welcome to Chalice Unitarian Universalist Congregation. We are a community of diverse beliefs and experiences, nurturing the liberal religious spirit and united by our desire to grow in love and in service. Whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever your life's journey, you are welcome here. Whether you gather with us every Sunday, once or twice a year, or are here with us this morning for the first time, we are glad you are here. I'm Reverend Sharon Wiley, Chalice's minister, and our worship musician this morning is Justin Gray. Welcome to this online worship service. Welcome to those of you watching live this morning using Zoom, and welcome to those of you who are watching the recording of this service later on our YouTube channel. For those of us using Zoom this morning, please notice on your menu that you have a button that says CC Live Transcript. That is our closed captioning service, Zoom's closed captioning service. You can click on it to hide the subtitle. If you don't want to see it, you can show the subtitle if you want that function on. Also on your menu is the chat button. For those of you who like to use the chat during the service, which you're welcome to do, please be sure that when you post that you've opened the little blue menu there to select panelists and attendees. As some of you were noting before I corrected the settings, if you only post to panelists, then only one person sees it, that's me. And we want everyone to be able to share what's in the chat together. So let's all give ourselves a big hug. Hello, good morning, it's Sunday. I want to especially welcome those of you who are newcomers at Chalice. Towards the end of the service, I will post a link in the chat box for you to add your name to our email list. Our weekly email is the best way to get information about our many online groups and activities that we offer using Zoom now. Once you're on that email list, you'll receive information about our monthly gathering for newcomers. Now, let's take a breath together.
Good morning. According to the Library of Congress, the first permanent Euro-American settlements began a pattern of displacement and land appropriation of indigenous people that continued until the 20th century. In this region that we consider home, the Kumeyaay first lived here for over 10,000 years and were the people who greeted the Spanish when they first sailed into the San Diego harbor in 1542. With this awareness, we acknowledge that Chalice is located on the stolen, tribal, ancestral homeland of the Apai, which is part of the Kumeyaay Nation, and the Payamkawichem Nation. This acknowledgement reminds us that we live in a history-driven present and that we need to be intentional with this land and with the people indigenous to the land. Mary Lyons from the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe states, "When we, the indigenous people, talk about land, land is part of who we are. It is a mixture of our blood, our past, our current, and our future." According to the research done with Reclaiming Native Truth, 40% of Americans do not believe that indigenous people still exist in the U.S. Chalice hopes that with our first step of land acknowledgement, we can move towards educating ourselves and others about indigenous communities and their rich and diverse culture and create a meaningful relationship with them as well.
Now we light our chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. The flaming chalice was first used during World War II by the Unitarian Service Committee as a symbol of life-saving refuge for people fleeing persecution in Europe. May our chalice flame burn brightly, that all who are seeking may find us. The blessings of Passover to each of us. The words of our call to worship come from the Reverend Beth Lefevre. We are whole, even in the broken places, even where it hurts. We are whole, even in the broken places, the places where fear impedes our full engagement with life, where self-doubt corrupts our self-love, where shame makes our faces hot and our souls cold. We are whole, even in those places where perfectionism blunts the joy of full immersion into person, place, activity, where good enough does not reside except in our silent longings, where our gaps must be fast filled with substance, accomplishment, or frenzied activity, lest they gape open and disgust. We are whole where we would doubt our own goodness, richness, fullness, and depth, where we would doubt our own significance, our own profoundness. We are whole, even in our fragility, even where we feel fragmented, alone, insubstantial, insufficient. We are whole, even as we are in process, even as we stumble, even as we pick ourselves up again, for we are whole. We are whole. Let us worship together. You're invited to join in singing. Our Sunday worship is the shared spiritual practice of our community, and we tend to the congregation during this time by sharing our joys and sorrows. If you would like to share a joy or sorrow with the congregation this morning, now is the time for sharing in the chat box. These won't be spoken out loud. If you would like to send me a confidential note about your joy or sorrow, or to make a prayer request, please email me and I'll put my email address in the chat box.
peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got pain like an arrow. I've got pain like an arrow. I've got pain like an arrow in my soul. I've got pain like an arrow. I've got pain like an arrow. I've got pain like an arrow in my soul. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain in my soul. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain in my soul.
Our story is called The Boy and the Bindi, written by Vivek Shraya and illustrated by Rajni Pereira. Have you seen my Ami's dot? It's a bright and pretty spot. Her dot comes in every hue. She likes red and sometimes blue. She peels and pastes it like a sticker, gently with her thumb and finger. Above her nose is where it goes. What is this dot? I want to know. Ami, why do you wear that dot? What's so special about that spot? It's not a dot, says my Ami. It's not a spot. It's a bindi. What's a bindi? What does it do? My bindi keeps me safe and true. How does it do that, Ami? How? Well, when I stick it on my brow, my bindi tells me where I'm from. My bindi reminds me of my mom, and when she gave me my first one. I look at her bindi with this view. I too would like to be safe and true. Ami, can I have a bindi to wear? Do you have one more to spare? She smiles and reaches in her drawer. Ta-da, she says. This one is yours. She sticks it on my bare forehead. But in the mirror, I don't see red. What a surprise to discover yellow is my bindi's color. As soon as it's on, I feel so calm, like all the noise around is gone. But when I'm outside, people stare. Maybe they want a bindi to wear? My friends at school all want to know, what is that dot above your nose? I do not have the words to say, but if I close my eyes and wait, my bindi turns into a star, and then my forehead turns into the sky. That's when all my fears fade out of sight, and my body feels so light. Ami was so very right. So now I leave it on my face. My bindi will always have its place. When I bathe or go to bed, my bindi stays on my forehead. Not just because of the glue, or because it keeps me true, but sometimes I've felt small like a dot, and sometimes ugly like a blot. But if a bindi can be more than a spot, and bring beauty where there was not, maybe I can too. Have you seen my yellow dot? It's a bindi, not a spot. Why do you wear a bindi, you say? Why is it so special anyway? Well, my bindi is like a third eye, watching over me all the time, making sure I don't hide everything I am inside and everything that I can be. Thank you, Ami, for my bindi.
She asked if she can talk to me about Jesus at 3 a.m. on the C train because something about my queer face means clearly I'm on a path straight to hell. I've come to expect this type of reaction from strangers at least once a week since the first time I was exercised at 16. But today I've grown tired, and I've decided it is my turn to proselytize. So before you do any of that, I want to know from you, have you heard the good word about Joseph of Genesis? See, Josephine, Joe of Genesis, favorite child of Jacob, aka Israel. When asked what you wanted, you desired one thing, a ketoneth pasim. Pastor called this a royal coat, and Joseph, I had never read the Bible before, found you and kept reading Josephine. I got to 2 Samuel and realized your coat of many colors was a princess dress. Joseph, your father must have really loved you, because he got it for you and you wore it with pride. Joe, when your brothers saw you in your flowing dress, in your glory, they became enraged. I am sorry for the beating you received. Sorry they destroyed your dress and smeared it with the red paint of your swollen veins. Josephine, did you know they told your father you were dead? So he never come looking for you, never knew your brothers, sold you as a slave into Egypt, and once you were stolen from your home fields, the earth dried up. Joe, the very ground on which you walked, mourned the loss of its genderqueer child. And all the plants died, and the animals no longer had the will to live. Josephine, your family nearly starved. Saw the formation of ribs where once there grew flesh and belly fat, and they, hungry and desperate, traveled into Egypt. And what must they have seen, Joe? See, in Egypt, people discovered you, not as a fag, not as a tranny. They saw you in totality. You went from slave to leader over lands. There you were, Josephine, as you, as magnificent. And your family couldn't even recognize you through the glare of divinity, but you saw them shivering in fear, waiting to hear what this regal leader might say, wondering if your spirit might see fit to grant them the grain needed to survive. And Joseph Love broke through the darkness of resentment. And for the first time, your family saw you, as magnificent, for it was your word that saved them from starvation, dear Joseph of Genesis, aka Josephine, aka Joe. I'm claiming your story for every queer kid told that we are unholy. I'm claiming your story for every queer told that in order to love, we must let our fate die. I'm going to put it in a pocket over my heart, next to Ruth and Naomi, next to David and Jonathan, next to Hegai and Deborah, and seat them at the last Passover with Jesus and Lazarus. Yes, I am taking Jesus with me too, dear pastor. To you, who claims your words are from God, but whose book has been pledged to King James, know what allegiances you keep. We have been lying about my people for too long. Thank you.
This coming Wednesday, March 31st, is International Transgender Day of Visibility. And our service today hopes to raise awareness about discrimination faced by transgender people worldwide. The importance of visibility feels so powerful to me right now during this pandemic, when so much of what is happening is largely invisible to us. When we have returned to something closer to normal times, we will need to tell and hear the stories of how the pandemic has impacted already marginalized peoples. We know that COVID-19 is affecting Black, Indigenous, Latinx, and other people of color in much higher rates than white people. When this is over, we will hear how entire families and entire communities have been impacted. Without even knowing yet, specifically how trans people have been impacted by COVID, we know that stigma and discrimination make transgender people reluctant to get help. We know that barriers to accessing healthcare, such as lack of insurance, leaves trans people less likely to get medical care. And we know that existing health conditions mean more trans people live in a state of compromised health. We also know that the advice to stay at home and to stay away from people outside your home can be extremely challenging for many transgender people who report conflict with their families and high rates of intimate partner violence. An article in the New York Times in June 2020, so last year, reported that the coronavirus economy is especially harsh for transgender people, noting that people who are most marginalized are going to be most impacted. They're going to be the last hired and the lowest paid. The article went on, the obstacles for transgender people, even before COVID-19, were daunting. While studies show that white gay men experience levels of poverty similar to heterosexual men, transgender people of color are 6 times more likely than the national average to be unemployed, and 5 times more likely to have incomes of less than $24,000 a year. Inequity has been worse for transgender people of color who face higher rates of poverty, homelessness, violence, and HIV infection than their white counterparts, research has shown. And again, I'm still citing from this New York Times article from last June. Before the pandemic, many transgender people of color who failed to find traditional jobs turned to sex work, according to advocates. And of course, some have continued with that work despite the virus risks. They are still engaging in sex work because that is still their primary form of income. It will take some time to collect data and know the impact of COVID on transgender people as a group, because it doesn't appear that information about sexual orientation and non-binary gender identity is being collected in COVID statistics. My search for recent news articles about transgender people and COVID turned up nothing, which suggests transgender people are as invisible as ever during this pandemic. I did find news just this week that a new study found that transgender people are much more likely than cisgender people to face physical violence and to be the victims of property crime. According to the study, trans people face 4 times more violence than cis people. Cisgender, if you need reminding, is a term that describes people who are not trans or gender variant. In other words, those whose gender identities, presentations, and behavior match the sex they were assigned at birth. I am cisgender because I identify as female, and I was assigned female when I was born. So I'm a cis woman, not a trans woman. The study I was just citing from did not analyze differences in violence faced by transgender people of color and cisgender people of color. So race wasn't considered in that study. The high rates of violence against transgender women of color is receiving more and more attention. The LGBTQ Nation website reports that violent crimes against transgender women of color have hit an all-time high over the past 2 years, with at least 11 women already murdered so far in 2021. The Violence Against Women Act that recently passed the House specifically includes transgender women. I'm not sure about its chances in the Senate. What a strange thing to say. Hopefully the recent gun violence against women in Atlanta helps move people to action who might not have been moved before. What I hope you hear in these reports and statistics is some of what it means to live with a marginalized identity or marginalized identities. Being transgender, being non-conforming isn't just one thing, one societal challenge to overcome, one form of discrimination to push back against. To live with a marginalized identity is to face multiple ways that power is taken away from or withheld from you. Poverty, homelessness, illness, lack of employment, lack of insurance, and violence. Violence at home, property crime, violence just living your life. A transgender man in Carlsbad was attacked a week ago after revealing to some people he had just met that he is transgender. He is in intensive care with a fractured skull and a broken back. Imagine being attacked for who you are. And perhaps some of you don't have to even imagine. Our service today is called God Loves Trans People, because believe it or not, that is still a radical statement. And it is a statement that not enough trans people hear from religious leaders, from religious people, and from religious communities. In our UU communities, God loves trans people is a provocative statement because we know we don't all believe in God. That's the part we want to argue about. But we would none of us debate that trans people have inherent worth and dignity, are in fact beautiful, and are part of the interdependent web of all existence, as we all are. Black lives matter. Trans lives matter. Black trans lives matter. I feel like the intention of Transgender Day of Visibility is to be joyful and celebratory. And I wish I could have shared a message that was more celebratory and joyful. Maybe my message later in the service gets there. But to be honest, I need to name this morning that I feel very close to what's hard and broken in our world. And it may seem tangential, but to me, it's not. My heart is really full of worry about the people of Brazil and the COVID situation there. And it makes me aware that we have such a long way to go before this pandemic is over. And in talking about what we can't see, thinking about people in other countries all over the world. And so this morning, friends, I want to invite you to pray with me. Let's take a breath together. Spirit of life, God of many names, great mystery. There is so much hurting in the world, so much imperfection, so many ways that we don't hold each other well or gently or with compassion. In a world of great abundance, we have been unable to share that abundance so that all peoples have enough. We have been unable to share our abundant love so that all people feel loved, that all people feel accepted. Not all people can walk down the street without expectation of harm. As I think of people affected by COVID all over the world, but I also am thinking this morning of transgender people all over the world. If the United States, the place of great freedom, we want to believe, if people here face so much violence, what is it like for people in other communities and other cultures? And I'm thinking of children all over the world who maybe feel curious about a different form of dress or a symbol on the forehead and dare not express their curiosity. As we face what can feel overwhelming, I pray for the strength and resilience for all of us to keep on working to build a better world. And there will be times that some of us need to lay down and rest from the work. And there are more than enough of us to pick up that work so that others may rest. May we remember that there are so many of us working and dreaming and hoping for this better world. And may that vision of our interdependence and our great unity inspire us when we feel uninspired and lift us up when we are feeling low. May it be so. Amen. You're invited to join in singing. Today is a social justice Sunday when we donate our offering to a local organization that makes a difference in our larger community. This Sunday, we are taking a special collection for trans family support services located here in San Diego County.
Being the parent of a transgender child is truly a gift, but it doesn't come with a how-to manual, and that is where Trans Family Support Services comes in.
At the beginning of our journey helping our child, we felt really confused and isolated. Trans Family Support Services was there for us, made connections, and allowed us to interact with other individuals and really helped us on our journey.
In a time where we felt overwhelmed and at times completely helpless, our family came together and worked closely with Kathy, and I know that my son has benefited from those services.
When my daughter Leah transitioned a year ago, we felt like we had a whole new world to navigate. Our process has been made so much easier so that my daughter can live her authentic life.
Thank you for everyone being so supportive of me for being transgender.
Trans Family Supporting Services has been paramount in helping us navigate the difficult path of raising a transgender kid. Our kid attempted suicide. I was out of country, my wife was alone in the city, and when that happened, we knew that the first group we had to reach to was Transgender Family Support Services.
Trans Family Support and Services has helped my family understand what it's like to have a transgender son. Like many other families, they helped me a lot through my medical transition to help find doctors, insurance coverage, and lessen financial aid.
As the parent of a transgender child, I understand the uniquely challenging journey families face. Trans Family Support Services has served over 150 families, helping them with support and acceptance of their child, gaining access to medical transition and insurance coverage, and navigating the educational and legal system. Won't you please help us help others? Donate today and be a part of changing lives and saving our youth.
Thank you, Trans Family Support Services.
There are two ways to donate. You can make a donation directly to Trans Family Support Services. I'm putting a link to their organization in the chat box. That way you can donate directly. You can be added to their mailing list to get news and updates directly from them about their organization. But also, if you prefer, you can text your donation to Chalice and we will forward the donations. To indicate your donation is for this special offering, please text your dollar amount and the word justice, because this is a social justice collection. And if your Sunday donation is part of your pledge payment, please be sure to indicate pledge after the dollar amount. Please give generously. Please join in dedicating our offering with words of affirmation. Open hearts, open minds, open doors, nurturing spirits, seeking justice within the wider world. This is our mission.
I'm not one to lecture, how could I dare? Someone like me who's been mainly nowhere, but in my experience, be as it may, you just have to love who you love. You just have to love who you love. Your common sense tells you best not to begin, but your full heart cannot help plunging in, and nothing and no one can stand in your way. You just have to love who you love. You just have to love who you love. People can be hard sometimes, and their words can cut so deep. Choose the one you choose, love, and don't lose a moment's sleep. Who can tell you who to want? Who can tell you what you were destined to be? Take it from me, there's no fault in loving, no call for shame. Everyone's heart does exactly the same, and once you believe that, you'll learn how to say, I love who I love, who I love. Then just go and love who you love.
Some good news from this week. The United States Senate has confirmed our first openly transgender official. Dr. Rachel Levine will serve as the Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services in the Biden administration. So that's extraordinary, actually. Yay. Our story today, The Boy and Bindi, was written by Vivek Shraya, who is a trans woman of color. The bindi is traditionally worn by women, but in the story, it is a boy who asks to wear the bindi, and his mother happily offers him one. It's not a story of oppression or marginalization, just a story of curiosity and exploration. The story is a celebration and affirmation that being different is not wrong or bad or scary. In fact, being different is wonderful. And the reading for today, the performance of the original poem, Josephine, by Black trans queer poet and educator J. Mays III at Middle Collegiate Church in New York City. Trans readings of religious texts bring powerful new insights, and there is no religious tradition that does not have trans members. If you don't believe me, just Google trans Mormons, trans Muslims, trans Quakers, trans Jews, trans Christians. Trans UU religious professionals have an organization called Trust with 2 U's in the middle there, and trans and non-binary UUs have a robust Facebook group. Perhaps the good news this morning is that trans people and trans allies are fighting for trans rights in hundreds of different ways, maybe thousands, creatively and joyfully, taking up space, speaking up loudly, writing children's books, holding elected and appointed offices, speaking at church, appearing on the cover of Time magazine. Every person who refuses to conform to the little boxes that society tries to put us in helps all of us build a world with more possibilities for liberation, a world with more love, acceptance, joy, and justice, a world where people can live their lives without fear, without violence, without the invisibility that comes from living in the margins. Let's lift our hearts in thanks to all the trans people all around the world, leading the way to building a new world. Please join in singing.
The promise of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love abide, and so every soul is blessed and made whole. The truth in our hearts is our guide. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. Sometimes we build a barrier to keep love tightly bound, corrupted by fear, unwilling to hear, denying the beauty we found. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. A bright new day is dawning, when love will not divide. Reflections of grace in every embrace, fulfilling the vision divine. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. We are answering the call of love.
Our closing words come from Reverend Deborah Hafner. We are on a journey. We didn't plan it. We didn't have time for the bread to rise. We may find ourselves in the wilderness, hungry, thirsty, doubting that we should have ever come. But look around. We are not alone. It is our journey together, a journey to our better selves, a journey to a better world, a journey to a more promised land. You're invited to close our time together by singing the well. Afterwards, everyone is invited to our coffee hour.